day you almost ran me off the road. Could you please drive respectfully and obey the law when you're here?
What is your problem with me, man? I'm at home on my day off. What is your problem with me?
I just realized it was your... You almost ran me off the road the other day. I've caught you littering the neighborhood. We're on 324th Street. I've seen you throw litter out your window. I've seen you run through stop signs.
What is your problem with
my problem? I have no problem with you.
Did I write you a ticket?
No, you continually violate the law. Can you just respect the law and not speed and not stop and not run through stop signs down here? I would appreciate that. The next time I will go to your supervisor. The last 3 times I didn't.
The next time you come to my house, this is my house. You have the right to be here and yell at me.
I'm on the property. I'm asking you to please obey the law. I'm asking you to please obey the law, sir. This story began in October 2012 because of a Homestead police officer, Alejandro Merguido. He was driving erratically through my neighborhood, placing me in fear for the safety of my children and my community. I asked him to mind his driving through my neighborhood. After this encounter, Alejandro Merguido chased me down and called Miami-Dade Police Department, who responded and held me for over an hour and a half. There were other civil rights violations committed against me by both the Homestead and Miami-Dade officers who responded. The report was written as a simple neighbor dispute. However, despite this, Miami-Dade officers saw fit to come to my house 6 months later and arrest me without a warrant for alleged crimes that were not going to go stale. During this arrest, my rights were again violated, at least because none of the officers that I dealt with over the next several hours would tell me why I had been arrested, even after repeated requests. This is a clear violation of the legal requirements for an arrest without a warrant under Florida Statute 901.17, and I feel it's a further attempt to intimidate me. So far, because of the wrongful actions of officers involved, I've had to spend about $20,000 in legal fees and associated costs. This does not include the many countless hours and many days of lost productivity I've had to endure while pursuing justice. This is time and resources that could have and should have been devoted to my family, particularly my 3 small children. However, officers in the Miami-Dade Police Department have in one way or another thwarted me at every attempt to bring my evidence forward. Several law enforcement officers that I'm close with, as well as several of my attorneys, inform me that these actions or lack thereof rise to the level of kidnapping and retaliation against a witness and or tampering with the witness, among the litany of other crimes and violations. The timeline that I have established plausibly infers retaliation against my civil rights by both Homestead and Miami-Dade police officers. Major Bird, I sent you an email on April the 23rd to which you have failed to respond. In this letter, I described how Officer Diaz agreed that my evidence was both substantial and that specifically under the Miami-Dade Police Manual, Chapter 12, Part 1, Section III, Subheading A, Paragraph 3, that he does not have discretion but is actually obligated to effect an arrest. However, he stated to me that his supervisor, which I must assume at this point is you, had decided that my issues are too complicated and over his or your head, and as such, the Miami-Dade Police Department will not take my case or act on any of my evidence. Even based on the evidence the officers were in possession of at the time of my arrest, namely statements made by Alejandro Merguido, there was no probable cause for the arrest present, as the necessary elements of the crimes had not been met. This is true even if we are to ignore the multiple inconsistencies in his different statements and consider them to be true, while also viewing them in the light most favorable to the officer. It is noted why an officer will retain their qualified immunity for a mistake of fact. They do not generally have qualified immunity for a mistake of the law. Further, Alejandro Merguido even admits in his statements that I was criticizing the performance of his police duties. This is speech of public concern and is therefore protected under the First Amendment. It is activity which is explicitly exempted from the statutes for which I was falsely arrested. The landmark United States Supreme Court case Hill v. Houston specifically states, the freedom of individuals verbally to oppose or challenge police action without thereby risking arrest is one of the principal characteristics by which we distinguish a free nation from a police state. Your inaction, Major Bird, would appear to infer that you do not see this as a free nation. It is unconscionable that the Miami-Dade Police Department would make an arrest of me based solely on the testimony of Alejandro Merguido, which testimony is easily demonstrated as fabricated. but conversely, that they would then fail to make an arrest based on evidence that I have presented, where the evidence I presented is substantial and includes audio recordings as well as sworn statements and public records. Further, the evidence presented to you by Officer Diaz, presented to you and Officer Diaz, clearly indicates that Aliana Merguido has committed at least the crimes of perjury, simulated use of legal process, fabrication of evidence, and retaliation against / tampering with the witness, and that he has committed such actions with malice. It is also noted that the copies of Aliana Merguido's personnel file that I have provided you with shows that he has a history of making false statements and retaliating against civilians, as well as his propensity towards dangerous driving. All of this supports my allegations that I have made. These are felony violations of Florida law, which were committed within your jurisdiction. A proper investigation here may uncover evidence that could be exculpatory to several Miami-Dade police officers that I currently must anticipate filing suit against. Lack of appropriate action would also appear to be a Class of 1 type discrimination and a violation of the Equal Protection Clause of the United States Constitution, as you were treating one type of citizen, a police officer, differently than you're treating a second class of citizen, a civilian. Further, your failure to take appropriate action serves to obstruct, delay, and/or prevent the communication of my evidence relating to the commission of a felony, which directly affects your agency and department. As such, it creates a prima facie case of official misconduct, which is a third-degree felony under Florida Statute 838.022, Section 1, Paragraph 3. It is expected to prevent any appearance of collusion that you would immediately begin to take the necessary corrective actions. This will help to prevent any further deprivation of my rights under color of law and continued denial of my rights of due process. I would like to thank everyone again for their time and for listening to my story. And I now request that Major Byrd give a response.
Mr. McDonald, I am vaguely familiar with your case that you're talking about. It did occur prior to my assignment here. It is my understanding that the Police Legal Bureau as well as the Professional Compliance Bureau are currently investigating your case. All the information that you've sent to me was promptly forwarded to those two entities.
I had requested that information not be sent to the Public Corruption Bureau. I'm sure you're well aware, as the lieutenant and many other officers in the Public Corruption Bureau have been arrested for corruption, for plotting murders, for dealing drugs, for giving sensitive information.
It wasn't forwarded to public.
And this is actually has nothing to do with the Miami-Dade police officer, the allegation I gave you. It was a Homestead officer who committed violations of the law outside of his jurisdiction, inside of your jurisdiction. And, you know, there are many civil rights violations that will be pursued in the future, but it would be most proper for you to begin to arrest Officer Merguido for the violations of Florida law he has made. And again, as I said, when you do such, it will most likely uncover exculpatory information that would clear some of your officers.
Mr. McDonald, I assure you that no one is ignoring your case. I was instructed that the Professional Compliance Bureau had an open investigation with regard to your case, so they're working this case.
That's a separate case. They're two separate things.
This information was forwarded to them, and they said it's part of that ongoing case.
Well, that's incorrect. I want to know now that since I have presented you with evidence that even Officer Robert Diaz agreed was more than substantial to show felony violations of Florida law within this jurisdiction, is somebody going to effect an arrest, or will this be forwarded to the FBI or FDLE or Department of Justice or State's Attorney's Office? When I called Officer Diaz, he told me specifically, he wouldn't tell me who his supervisor was, but he said that after speaking with them, that they said that Miami-Dade would not take my case, and he attempted to send me to the FDLE. I informed him that I had already been to the FDLE, and they specifically stated that they would not take complaints from citizens, but they would only get involved in the investigation if the police request them to. So I'm now asking you, will you request them to get involved in the investigation, and will you forward them my evidence so we don't continue to further prevent, delay, and obstruct the transmission of my evidence?
I will forward this information again. It's an open investigation through our agency. I will forward this information and convey your sentiment about it, that it be forwarded to FDLE through our agency.
Okay, is there any reason that Officer Diaz would have told me after speaking with the supervisors that they had decided that they would not pursue the case?
I can't speak for Officer Diaz, and I don't know what supervisor he spoke with that instructed him.
But you hadn't spoken with Officer
I
Diaz?
have not spoken with Officer Diaz with regards to the case.
Okay, so it would be somebody most likely in between you and him in the chain of command?
I would assume so. But
Okay. Okay. Because I also had sent you the email and forwarded the evidence to you as well, so you should have that on record. Okay. Well, the evidence, the case I was given to the PCB was about Lieutenant Diaz de Villegas and several other Miami-Dade police officers, and that's separate and severable from the felony violations under Florida law committed by Officer Merguida, which is not related to the federal civil rights claims that will be brought forward. And so I really appreciated that if you or somebody in your department would follow the Miami-Dade SOP manual, as it specifically states that you have no discretion but are obligated to effect the arrest. If not, if it's, as Officer Diaz's words, not mine, over anybody's heads here, then I would expect no less than it be forwarded with a request to the FDLE and the state's attorney's office, as well as the FBI and Department of Justice. Thank you.
You came to CAC before, remember you?
Yeah.
How long ago was that?
I've been several times. Every time I've come here, I've gotten really funny answers from police officers. You remember the last time I was here when I was asking if it was common policy for Miami-Dade police law to refuse to inform people of what they were being arrested